So the shift continues this week as we are continuing to move towards Holy Week. We're talking about these paradigm shifts that God has set before us in the teachings, the ways of Jesus Christ. And I have to say, I've got to talk to folks who are doing the small group, the journeys, and I've been so encouraged by some of the deep discussions people are giving thanks for, that they've come together and they've elicited conversation, because that's really what we're going for, is not just this passive faith of here's information and we just absorb it. A passionate faith is one that we talk about, discuss, have discourse over, debate, arguments. Even arguments are okay in this faith tradition. It's a beautiful thing. I love it. And I want to thank you for journeying with me through Holy Week. And if you're not a part of a small group, just for being a part of this worshiping community where we wrestle with these paradigm shifts. This week's paradigm shift should particularly resonate with you if you, like me, grew up with this understanding of God being described as a God of grace. If you grew up hearing that, of this God of mercy, this should resonate with you. However, it's really powerful because if you've also heard of another version of God, particular characteristic of God, that I would probably sum up in a simple phrase, God as judge. Some of you have probably heard this before. Some of you may have been brought up in this tradition. We've had new members talk about their experiences of church, their experience of understanding who God is, and that is a reoccurring theme, is this description of God as someone who needs to be satisfied by our doings. Have you heard of this tradition? I'm sure you've seen these billboards, right? It's a popular concept that somehow the first description of a person is totally bound by sin, totally insufficient, and if you were to do these things, like be a part of this church, understand these things, follow these traditions, follow these rules, you can sufficiently, perhaps, please God enough, satisfy God's judgment, and God will spare you from sending you to a fiery pit of unpleasantness. Some of you have heard this before, because you should, because it's a really common understanding, a common interpretation. It's something I would say when I was a kid, you could hear this expression, doing good, get your stuff. Right? That's a certain understanding of God. If you do right, if you satisfy God's anger towards us, then you're okay. And that's never resonated with me. I am very fortunate that I never heard it kind of portrayed as a truth. That kind of understanding that God is dangling us over a flame of punishment. Particularly this passage makes me struggle with that. The famous oft-quoted reference to the character of Jesus that's found in John, which makes me think exactly what's stated there. That God did not send his son to condemn the world. God sent his son to do what? Ooh, you know the words. To save it. It's a beautiful sentiment, which is at the heart of this paradigm shift we're talking about today, which is a shift for some, a shift from seeing God as angry, wrathful, and disgusted with us to a God that sets us free to be what we were made to be, as we heard in Ephesians. We were made to be this way, a gift to the world. The shift this week is from a fear of God to the freedom found in Christ. So the story today starts off with a reference to this serpent being lifted up. Just as the serpent was lifted up by Moses, so Jesus will be lifted up. And we heard this lovely story, but I'll admit, I just want to go a little deeper because I love this story from Exodus. Have you guys heard the story where God sicks a bunch of snakes on God's people? You have, yeah. It's a popular story, but if you haven't, I'll refresh you. So we know the story of Exodus where Moses set my people free, right? And there's all this, there's plagues, there's a splitting of the sea. You've seen the Charlton Heston movie, I assume, right? So the people are set free by God, and they're following this pillar of smoke. God has provided them manna to eat, quails to eat. God continues to provide for God's people. The sea literally split in half for them to walk on dry land, and they're walking through the land, and they're now in wilderness, and something starts happening. The people start, it says, grumbling. If any of you have ever grumbled before, this is a great tradition for you, you know? This is the first time the people of faith have grumbled, and it won't be the last time. So the people are grumbling because maybe they're wondering, maybe this Moses guy and this God who delivered us, I get the idea, but do you know when we were slaves in Egypt, they at least fed us meat. It was mystery meat, sure, it was flesh pots. We don't know what it was, but we ate every night. Maybe we should go back. Maybe we should do something other. And it even says that. Moses, why'd you leave us out here to starve and eat this awful food? Like starve and eat food. It's like children, right? Like, I'm starving. You're not starving. You just don't like what's for dinner. So they're grumbling. It's a tradition. It's something we're formed by. And what happens is, it says God gets so frustrated by this that God sets snakes on them. And I read that the first time I was a kid. I was like, man, God is petty. Who doesn't like, sometimes the travel meals aren't the best. This is really early in their story, and they're already fed up. And I'm like, geez, I have sour news for you, God. It's only going to get worse. But God sets these snakes upon them, and the people are frustrated. And I have to say, the snake thing is so powerful, because this isn't the first time a serpent's been in a Bible story, right? You guys know the other time where there was a serpent, a key character? You guys remember that one in Genesis? At the very beginning, we got this adversary, this person that says, you know what? God said this, but I'm telling you otherwise. A serpent says, you know, you could be better than what you are right now. Just do this. They go, I can be like God. I can determine the good difference between good and evil. I can do this right and wrong thing. I don't need God. It's so powerful that the people that are in the wilderness are set upon by snakes, because these people are also wondering, should I really be following this God's advice? Following this pillar of fire? Should I really be eating this manna when I could be eating flesh pots? I might know the difference between good and better. Notice the similarities? These snakes come and start biting him. What is the venom, the poisonousness of this idea that we are God? Suffering, judgment, pain, death, people left out, people abandoned because we know best. It's a powerful thing that what's set upon them is the literary embodiment of their sin. So it says, they finally come to Moses and go, this isn't working, they're snakes, what do we do? And God says, make a snake, put it on a stick, raise it up. I'm like, this is some weird magic. But if you think about it, think about what's happening. Make a snake and have them look at it. Have you ever been faced with a challenge or a problem and have tried to ignore it, not look at it? Does it go away? Does the problem go away if you don't look at it? No, they're very quiet. No, it doesn't. Because we try that, don't we? And here it is. It says, look at this thing. Look at the thing that's causing division, pain, and death. Look it straight in the face. Confront it. And you will receive healing. Ooh. Can you tell I like the Old Testament? I just love it. It's got such deep meaning than just these events or a stick with a bronze serpent on it. There's such a meaning to this. Look your sin in the face. Know what it is. Know what's dividing you. Know that serpent-like tendencies that exist in our own hearts are divisive and hurt people. They kill people. It hurts us as a community. Look at it. And it says then, Jesus says in this passage, just as the serpent is lifted up, I will be lifted up. We know what Jesus was lifted up on, right? A cross. A symbol of death, torture at that time. I wonder when we look at him, when we're honest and face our own sin, when we look at the cross, what do we see? Do we see the connection? about what our ways lead to. Death, dying, somebody paying the price for a division, a separateness in the community. Their judgment is turned on them when the snake is brought to them. Our judgment is turned on us when this is laid up in front of us, that we have to face the cross. I love this symbolism. Will we see when we look at the cross injustice? Will we see when we look at the cross loneliness? I'll tell you, Good Friday's coming up. That is probably one of the most powerful nights for me. I get choked up thinking about it because of the idea of Jesus being crucified, and it says his disciples were far away. Do we see on the cross loneliness? Do we see when we look at the cross something more? Do we understand that maybe there was a misunderstanding? Maybe there was, honestly, this is justice. This is just how it has to work. He was a pot stirrer. No. There's no way to look at that and not be changed by the suffering, by the pain. We can see when Christ is lifted up exactly what the world was suffering from then and what the world is still suffering from today, which is putting somebody on the outside and determining that's the problem. Them. They. Maya is here today from Haiti. And Maya is, as the in-country director of the Haitian Timoun Foundation, I don't know if I've ever told this story where you've heard this story, but I witnessed this. We were at a worship service at Wings of Hope in Haiti. And Wings of Hope is for a lot of differently abled children, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, wheelchairs. It's a really challenging, for people to be at Wings of Hope, they're facing some real challenges and need a lot of acute special needs care. And there was a young person there in a wheelchair that, I guess the way I described it is he looked like he was just kind of untethered, like unconnected to his body, physically. It can be a hard thing to not be able to control your body. It's reminded me of when little ones are feeling like they're just in outer space. Where are my connections? Where am I grounded? And he let out this cry, this sob. He was looking for a way to feel grounded. And I loved Maya. This is just so vivid. You walked up to that young man and you put your hand on his cheek. And to see him lean into that, and his body began to relax. Because he was no longer just floating in space. He had love and connection. It was such a powerful revelation. I don't think you went up there to help him because you went, you know what, I've determined he's worth it. I've determined his sins aren't so great that he deserves this. No. You saw an opportunity to care for your brother who was in just need of a connection, to know he was grounded and rooted in love. And you went there. Throughout the service, Maya stood there, hand on shoulder. This young man just felt connected. It was wild to watch this change from just uncomfortable to comfort. A friendship. Someone who loved him was there. What that portrays to me is somebody who looked at the cross and saw that no one is deserving of feeling that separateness or loneliness anymore. You can't look at the cross and see that justice is being carried out by hurting someone better. You can't look at the cross and see anything other than suffering that deserves to be relieved. He shouldn't be up there. God didn't send his son to condemn the world, but to save it through him. Our mission as a people of God is not motivated by fear, but by a freedom that we are called to alleviate the suffering of our brothers and sisters. We are free, sent, commissioned, equipped to be a gift for the world. Do we serve our neighbors so that we please God? Do we go, I have to because God said so? Or do we serve our neighbors because, as Paul just said, we're literally made for it. We're literally designed to be in community, to love one another boldly and daringly, that no one would be without. Jesus, in being lifted up, is having us all face this sort of music, and we are reminded that the poison of retaliation, judgment, punishment, pain, it always will lead to death, suffering of our brothers and sisters, and that has nothing to do with the Jesus way, because you can't hurt the world better. As much as sometimes our frustrations and resentments tell us we can, we'd feel satisfied, it's poison. It's not made for us. The way, the truth, the light is found in the one who is crucified. It's found in Jesus Christ's way about setting the captive free. His way about forgiveness. His way of healing the sick, feeding the hungry, and knowing the mission. That work is worthy. That work is noble. That work is pure. In fact, we were made to do that work. Made to be free. Free to love, not afraid of our God. Free to serve, not afraid of God's judgment. Free to love and serve in daring confidence that our way is this Christ way. Our way of doing it the way we expect doesn't lead to freedom. This way of Jesus is the way of life. You all have been set free. So how are we going to be bold? How are we going to be daring and confident, knowing it's not our way we're following? Christ is leading the way. Amen.